Welcome to the Holistic Career Change Podcast, one-stop shop for everyone feeling stuck in their career and who are looking to identify, change, and succeed at their new fulfilling work. I'm your host, Dilma Oseita. Let's go. Hi, lovers. How the hell are you? Happy Halloween. I think the episode will be coming out right after Halloween. So in my part of the world, we don't really celebrate Halloween. I mean, there are parties and all, but I think it's more of an adopted tradition. And the original custom is actually what we call the All Saints Day, which is on November 1st, when this episode will be going out. So on this day or the night before, we usually go to the graveyard and we visit the ones that have passed away. We light the candles, and it's a sort of a beautiful day of remembrance. And, you know, as these days are getting shorter, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, it's that time to reflect, to go a little more quiet and introspective. It also happens to be one of my favorite times of the year, and probably on the contrary to many others who live for the spring and summer. I'm not like those. I don't know what it is. It's just that sort of elusive, enigmatic, nostalgic, a little bit melancholic feeling that I get at this time of the year. And I love this time. And also just I have an excuse then to light up all of my candles and use a lot of atmospheric lighting at home. And it just makes me very happy. When I used to live in Iceland, by the way, in winter, you'd sometimes get like 4 hours of daylight if you're lucky. And by daylight, I mean like dark, cloudy, rainy sort of daylight. And people would be complaining so much about it. And I would be like, what are you talking about? It's perfect. I don't know. Maybe I'm just designed to live in the north. So, in the previous episode, I introduced you to the thought work. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, please go back and listen to part 1 before you listen to this episode, because today essentially is going to be a continuation of it, and we will build upon what I've covered there. Now, I'm very well aware that for some of you, what I'm sharing here is not new at all, but I would still invite you to listen to this series, because that repetition, or maybe even just one word or one sentence that I may phrase differently than you've possibly have heard before could literally be enough to create a shift within you and give you that like tasty aha moment. I know it happens to me all the time. That's why I'm a fan of rereading or re-listening to content that I resonate with, because imagine this, like our brain is essentially new every day. So sometimes when we listen to something for the first time, we may not be able to grasp concepts or notice the subtle intricacies of something. And you've probably even experienced it yourself. You listen or read to something for the, second or third time, and you're like, oh, wow, I had completely not registered this specific bit when I was listening to it before. So our brain is selective like that. And when it meets new information, it will hold on to, the parts that are at least a little bit familiar with, because it works through associations and links. So if you can link whatever it is with the new information that you are reading, your brain is much more likely to retain it. I'm explaining it in a super simplistic way without using the terminology and giving you like the specific parts of the brain and the terms to describe this assimilation process, but only because my goal is and always has been to explain often a little complicated like neurological processes in simple words so that it would land better with all of you. So if you're familiar with thought work, still listen to these episodes. And if you're not familiar with this work, and I know some of you are not, because I did receive a couple of messages from the listeners sharing how the brain was exploding a little bit. So then if you're one of those for whom this work is new, listen to this several times. So in the previous podcast episode, I shared a couple of examples of how certain thoughts that had created limiting beliefs were severely affecting the results that my clients were capable to create within their lives and careers. And today, what I want to do is go a little bit deeper and walk with you through the back office of this concept. I use it in the form called self-coaching model, or just a model for short. The model was introduced by Brooke Castillo. However, she did not exactly invent this sort of tool. What she did is simply summarize the concepts she had been studying in various literature and sources. And the model in and of itself is deeply rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy, which basically is based on changing cognitive or thinking processes that people have. And there are general principles of psychology in it, and even spiritual practices in certain religions, such as Buddhism, for instance, is part of its eightfold part, which is the right mindfulness, being aware of what you feel, think, and do. And that is why I'm a fan of this model, because, you could call it a holistic approach to gaining awareness on what is actually going on in your brain, and also using this tool to rewire your limiting beliefs. So let me introduce to you how the model works briefly. The main premise of it is that everything in life can be seen and analyzed using 5 interconnected lenses. We start always with a neutral circumstance, which then leads us to having a thought or thoughts about this neutral circumstance. The thought will always be creating a feeling state in your body, and a feeling state or emotion will inspire your action or inaction, because inaction is also a form of action. And your action or inaction will finally create your results, something super tangible that you can see and often touch and feel in the world around you. In my coaching sessions, I usually write this out on the board so that we can sort of see visually that causal relationship between the 5 of them. So that would be clearer. So they go one after another in a column: circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. Right? And that's how we use these 5 to analyze any life or work situation. Now, let me explain each of them and how they actually work and interact with each other. So first, we look at the circumstance. A circumstance is something that is completely neutral. It's just a neutral fact of life. It's something that is objectively true, anything that is factually true and could be verified in the court of law. There's no room for opinion or interpretation. Like, for instance, my name is Vilma. That's a circumstance. This is a Holistic Career Change podcast. That's a circumstance. It's neutral. It's a fact. No one could argue with that, right? I work with women who are changing careers. Circumstance. It's neutral. It's just a fact, and no one can literally say anything about it. You cannot argue with the fact. Biden is the president of the United States. Circumstance. Even though Donald Trump probably has a lot of thoughts about that. Still a circumstance. It's neutral. It's a fact, right? Sorry, just couldn't resist that. Anyway, so you got it. The circumstance is just a neutral fact. Okay. Now, whenever we have a neutral circumstance, we will always have thoughts about the circumstance. And this is usually when it starts getting super convoluted. So the next line in the model is a thought. And the thought is essentially a sentence in your brain about that neutral circumstance. It's a judgment, it's opinion, it's attaching everything else that is not necessarily true and not necessarily objective. So for instance, you're someone who is currently going through a career change. That is a circumstance. You going through a career change is a fact, right? Now, where it gets messy is when we start attaching thoughts to our neutral circumstances. So for instance, to run with this example, you may think that career change is hard. That is one of the thoughts that you may have about this circumstance. Now, if you take any other human on the planet, he or she may actually have the exact same circumstance. That is them going through a career change, and they may have attached a thought that is completely different. For instance, career change is fun and liberating. Now you're both in the same situation, but your thoughts are literally polar opposite. right? You're with me, right? Like it's pretty straightforward. Now, um, I want to kind of run you through the model in other lines to see how this particular example would play out and affect your experience. So when we're having these thoughts, usually many thoughts about one single circumstance, they will then trigger a feeling within our body. Thoughts will trigger feelings, okay? Feeling is an emotion that is caused by your thought. For instance, when you think that career change is hard, you may feel discouraged, you may feel demotivated, you may feel numb, you may feel overwhelmed, and a gazillion of other emotions. However, if you're someone who has a thought, career change is fun and liberating, you will probably have quite a different feeling than that person A who thinks that career change is hard, right? If you think that it's fun and liberating, you will probably feel eager, you will be excited, motivated, and all the other associated emotions around that thought. Can you see how that could be the case? I want you to test it out with me right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and I want you to think a thought. Career change is hard. I want you to scan your body. What is happening? Is there any change in sensations? Change in your posture, in your breathing? Maybe something is happening in your chest, in your belly area. What's going on when you're saying and thinking, career change is hard? Chances are that you'll probably sense that it does not quite feel good. Like now that I'm recording this, I'm getting like a headache when I'm saying this, right? So for each of us, it's going to feel like differently, but you will definitely feel that there's a movement within you when you think that thought. It's not a very supportive, easy thought. It's a pretty hard thought. Now take another breath, another clearing breath. And I want you to consciously and intentionally focus on that opposite thought. Career change is fun and liberating. And I want you to do the same. I want you to scan your body and see if you feel a shift in how you feel, in sensations of your body. If you notice movement in your chest, for instance, before, notice what's happening in your chest now. If you really tune in, you should feel a pretty stark difference now compared to the previous state. For me, it just feels lighter. That's why I took a breath, because I'm like, oh, it's almost like that weight is taken off me, right? It's such a different quality and different energy thought. I feel like a little bit of expansion as well. What do you feel? Do you feel the difference between the two? And if it's not that clear, I want you to play around with this more. Like take two opposite thoughts and see how your body is reacting to them. I promise to you, your body is always speaking to you, okay? That's another probably separate podcast episode or series, but your body is always talking to you and sending you signals, and different thoughts will make you feel differently, right? Now, what could happen also sometimes that you may tell me, oh, I'm feeling sad, then I don't know why. I cannot figure out what thought I'm having. That's what people sometimes tell me. Well, that's because that is probably an indication that the thoughts that you're having that are creating the state are so deeply rooted and so old, they have become part of your subconscious, meaning that they are run on autopilot because the subconscious took the thought, internalized it, right? Because if there's something that you're thinking or doing over and over and over again, the way subconscious will react to it will be like, ooh, person A or person B keeps on doing that. That means it's something that's important to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't repeat it. Let me take it over, right? Like that's why I give that example to my clients all the time. Sometimes when you're driving and you don't even know what is happening, if it's a route that you know well, you will just end up somewhere like really quickly and then be like, oh my God, how did I get there? It's just because the subconscious took over. It's an autopilot at this point. So if you'll be telling me like, oh, Vilma, but I really can't pinpoint the thought, it could be that this is something that has been going on within you for so long that is part of the subconscious, but it still doesn't mean that we cannot analyze it, inspect it, and dig deeper and understand what original thought is now creating that repetitive feeling within you. Sometimes it's also linked to trauma responses. Again, that's another sort of series that at some point I like to share with you how to separate those out. But in general, in sort of more simple daily life situations, you will see a very clear link between the thoughts that you're having and the feelings that are being created within your body, right? Right. So just to repeat again, okay, we have a neutral circumstance, like I'm going through a career change. A circumstance will then lead to a thought, right? A thought will then trigger a feeling. And we also don't usually just have one thought about something, right? We have many thoughts. That means we may have many feelings attached to that one circumstance. And quite often, these may even be conflicting feelings. For instance, you want something, but you feel fearful. You want to change career, but you get paralyzed, right? You're fearful about it. That just indicates that you have a conflict in your thoughts that you have attached to this particular circumstance. That's why it's so important to unpack it all one by one. So when we run models, we choose just one thought and one feeling, okay? We don't analyze it in just one big lump, big ball of, shit, because it's so hard to untangle that. We analyze one thought line and one feeling line. The feeling state will then give motivation to action. Or as I've previously mentioned, it could also cause inaction. Because inaction is also you choosing an action to do nothing. Doing nothing is an action, okay? So for instance, procrastination is an action, right? So action is basically what you do or choose not to do when you're feeling the emotion. For instance, person A who has a thought career change is hard will probably often find themselves feeling discouraged and demotivated. So their action will probably involve quite a lot of procrastination, quite a lot of engaging in mindless searching, right? And scrolling and not really finding anything because they don't have much intention or clarity as to what they're searching for, because they think it's hard, they're tired, it feels complicated to them, they don't know where to start. It might involve them getting stuck in this analysis paralysis, which I also see a lot. That's when people usually come to me and they're like, listen, I kind of know, but I don't know what's going on, right? And all action that will be inspired, so to speak, by a thought that says career change is hard, you will have all that sort of unproductive action going on. And also remember that motivational triad that I have introduced to you before. If our brain is not managed, the primal brain will take over. And the primal brain is wired through the evolutionary experience to always default to three settings. Number 1, seek for pleasure. Number 2, avoid pain. Number 3, exude as little energy as possible, right? That's what it had to do back in the day to survive, and it's still running the show if the brain is not managed. So if you truly have a belief that career change is hard, you feel demotivated and deflated a lot, you spin in confusion, you know exactly what your managed primal brain will suggest. Take a break. Watch some Netflix. Make another coffee. Hey, haven't checked your phone in the last 15 seconds. Perhaps you should check it again. I don't want you to miss another cat video. You know it. I'm calling you out. It happens. I know this has happened to you because it has happened to me, because it happens to my clients as well. Our brain will always default to anything that will feel easier and familiar. Right? Because it deems and perceives familiar and easy as safe. It believes that it's keeping you safe and alive when it's offering you to do easy things. Nothing personal. So this is as well where I will ask you to become super intentional with how you label yourself. Because I hear a lot of self-shaming that could happen in those moments. It could be like, oh, I could do it, but I'm like so lazy, or I'm just so not focused, I'm this, I'm that. Like you start labeling all over yourself. Do not bully yourself like that. You're not lazy. You have a well-functioning brain that is designed to keep you safe and is doing a very good job. Thank you, brain. Okay, I know I said it many times, but I feel like that's something that I need to keep on repeating. And that's why I'm sharing all of this here with you, so that you would understand and get awareness of the inner workings of our programming and start shifting your patterns and managing your brain so that you would not be a slave of these old thought patterns and limiting beliefs, but rather befriend your brain and turn it into your supporter and partner in shine or in crime. Whatever you'll be choosing, okay? No judgment. Okay, so let me go back to the example. So person A will likely resort to inaction and spinning, right? Because they think the career change is hard, they don't feel good about it, and then they'll just end up procrastinating all over themselves and not really getting any results. Now, person B, who believes that career change is fun and liberating, they will feel eager, motivated, excited. What action do you think they will take from that space, from that state? You probably guessed it. Because you know how you show up when you are motivated and excited, right? If you're planning a trip and you love trips and you love planning, like how do you show up? How many hours do you spend researching and packing and, doing all of that fun stuff, right? So the person who believes that career change is fun and liberating will probably be more focused. They'll take more directed action. They'll talk to people. They tell them that they're changing. They'll spread the word. They network. They get help. They study themselves and their needs. They just basically be moving forward and making lots of progress compared to person B. And it all is stemming from that one core thought that they have attached to the neutral circumstance that they both share. Going through a career change. But choosing different thoughts will completely change the results that they'll be creating. So while person A will continue probably to spin, and fast forward 2 years, they'll probably be somewhere there, maybe have tried something, gotten back to the old career, still not knowing where they're going. And person B will have tried a lot of things and found the career and failed and tried again and, have made so much more progress and have gained and earned much more awareness about themselves and what they want in life, right? So the action will always lead to some sort of result or lack of result, right? Just like with action, lack of result is also a result. And it's a very informative one, right? So result is basically this consequence of our actions or inactions that were inspired by the feelings, that they're caused by the thoughts about an initial circumstance, which in and of itself was completely neutral. So there is that causal relationship between them all. So for instance, if my clients will show up to the session and share how the week has been, and I see that they did not manage to create whatever results they were after, I can very quickly trace back and know that they were spinning in mind drama and engaging with thought errors, and they were not on top of their thought work. I will always know that. I don't even need to ask them a lot of questions. I know exactly what's going on because the model works. And our results can always be traced back to our original thought. So in that sense, right, when we want to start changing any result in our lives, we should start focusing and noticing and evaluating and then shifting our thoughts versus just taking pure, naked action, as the majority of people do, by the way. Because just changing the action line will only last so long and may not produce those long-lasting results because it will simply not be addressing the root cause, determining the choice of action. And that is the original thought. That's why you have probably seen so many people around you struggling with any sort of change, like weight loss, for instance, because weight loss, I think, is a very visible process of change. because that's where you will get all kinds of yo-yo effects where, people will be losing weight and then it's going to be gaining it back. And a lot of people acting from A line, meaning taking a lot of action using willpower, and what I call like super masculine strategies, like those workout videos where there's a lot of muscular men and women shouting at you and telling you that, like, what was it? Insanity, one of those that I know, which is like, oh, you're not sweating, it's your fat crying. Oh, that was my favorite. I'm not against working out. I love working out. Like, I work out, right? But it's just like very sort of willpowery, very masculine, very straight lines, very hardcore, right? Like lots of action, lots of willpower, putting you down if you don't stick to your, workout routine, like go harder and so on and so forth. But if they don't align their thoughts with whatever action that they're taking with these workouts and really like strict diets, and if they don't readjust and course correct their limiting beliefs, their change cannot be sustainable no matter how hard they work on it. That's why people get like deflated so often. It's just the fact of life. And those, by the way, who do manage sometimes in rare occasions to keep the weight off, they probably have consciously or sometimes like unconsciously rewired their belief system that have supported that new identity. That's why they manage to keep the weight off. So my question to you is, how does this manifest in your career change process? Because lots of you probably haven't even started properly taking aligned action on your switch yet. Or maybe you have like, start and quit kind of pattern going on where you dabble, but you don't continue with it because you start doubting whether it's the path for you. So lots of you will feel stuck because you are simply jailed by these unsupportive beliefs that you live with. And you're probably identifying more with person A, right? Or have similar thoughts like that career change is hard, or that is complicated, or that you don't know where to start. And that is not supporting your process. And you might have managed to take some action, but if you continue running your brain on similar thoughts, feeding similar thoughts, whether conscious or unconscious, what will happen? You may even start a new career or business, but once you'll be hit with sort of the first serving of obstacles, you will be so much more prone to quitting quickly. Because your thoughts will say something like, see, I told you so, it's near impossible to change career when you're in your 30s, or it's probably not for me, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll add a layer of people around you who are always opinionated, people who will have all kinds of thoughts about your change as well. And they'll start saying things like, oh, maybe you should just go back to the old career. Wasn't that bad, was it? Right? And then the brain will essentially win over you, and you'll go back to the old familiar ways where your brain feels safe, even though if your soul will be suffocating. That's why lots of you are unhappy in your career, because it's not in alignment with your truth anymore. But the brain has become so strong, the thought processes are wired in so deeply that you feel stuck. And that inner conflict, like I said many times, is just taking so much energy, right? Kind of like the creative client that I told you about in the last episode, where like she would be taking lots of action, but she never did thought work. That's why she could never hold a business for long enough. She would not even like give it a proper chance, to be honest, because with the first phase of obstacles, she'd just drop it and retrieve, because her thoughts were like, creative business is not serious. It's just a game. I can't earn money with this, so on and so forth. Well, no wonder she had no success and no results, right? Just like that quote from Confucius, the man who says he can and the one who says he can't are both right. Very serious pause there. So that is exactly why in my practice, I pay just so much attention to the belief systems and thought work. It's the foundation for your future success and results and your fulfillment and for living your purpose. Trust me, I promise you, if it wasn't so vital, I would not bother you with it. I like to be efficient. I would not spend a second of my time or your time talking about this in so much detail and turning this into series if I haven't seen firsthand that this is the deciding factor. Not just in your career, in your whole life. And hopefully this is giving you some awareness and opening you up to start seeing the world through this new lens. Right? Because your most practiced thoughts always work. They become your reality. And they're currently, right now, either supporting your growth and supporting you moving forward, or they're hindering your progress. And there are no right or wrong thoughts or beliefs. There are just the ones that are serving you and the ones that are not. There's no judgment there. You just need to review and choose. So you may be having thoughts like, oh, I can't switch careers because, I can't earn less than I do now. I don't know what I actually want to do next. I'm too old to switch. I can't get this new education. I can't spend all this time and money again to go back to school. I can't switch and then change again. What if this won't work? Can't afford that. I can't go through that. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want people to think I'm weird or that I've lost it. I'm going to choose something that is perhaps more unconventional, right? I have a lot of light workers coming to work with me where they're choosing these alternative, beautiful healing paths, and they are so terrified that they'll be judged because they're steering away from that conventional path that the society told them that they should follow, right? People just don't want to lose it all. And these thoughts, again, like I said last time, are very catastrophic. They're very strong. No wonder it's so hard for them to start taking action. None of these thoughts are actually true. They're just thoughts that you have practiced so much that they have become your truth. And they turned in a belief that is limiting you right now. They're not true. They're just a program that was installed. Who told you you have to earn less in a new career? I gave you so many examples of people who earn much more than they do now in their current careers that I freaking hate. Also, the thought that you don't know what you want to do next. I spoke about this on Instagram the other week, which was like, I don't know is such a smart protective mechanism answer that is stopping you from digging deeper. Do you really don't know? Or are you just having your truth locked up somewhere inside of you and you actually know what next career path should be for you? It's just literally jailed by the limiting beliefs. You cannot even see it properly. You cannot even access it. Do you sincerely believe you're too old? Like, really? Is that an absolute truth? From where I'm standing, it's not. It's relative. Age is completely relative. I have people changing careers in the late 60s, and they think it's the right time for them. Your age has nothing to do with it. Right? A lot of these thoughts are putting unfair handcuffs on what's available for you. And these are just a couple of thoughts that I have heard before, but these are pretty common. And I can promise to you, they're 1000% figure outable if you open up to this work. And for now, I'm not even going to ask you to run the models. Just have that basic awareness of what's actually going on. I just want you to bask in that new awareness of just exactly how your thoughts have been creating your results up until now, or lack of results, because lack of result is a very important result that we tend to ignore sometimes, right? What also doesn't help is that our brain works only on historical data. It's like that old computer that got its programming installed like back in your childhood. It's like that. A lot of these old programs are so rudimentary, and these are like the old thought patterns that you simply don't need anymore. And it's funny, we often think that we make our own choices and we make our own life decisions, but the truth is, a lot of these choices are already predetermined by this old programming of what we think we can or can't, of what we think is allowed or not allowed. And it all started back in the day in our childhood, very, very early on, when we were tiny babies, starting to crawl and explore the world. You know how we would decide whether something was safe for us or something was allowed when we couldn't communicate? By observing our mother's face or our father's face. Because we had no other tools, we had no words, we had no ability to comprehend in a different way. We had a very strong connection mostly to our mothers through feeding. So say, for instance, if we were about to crawl somewhere or touch something and we notice that our mother's face is concerned looking at us, that would be a signal for us that is not a good idea. That's how we were learning to decide what's safe and allowed. Now imagine, for instance, that your mother was concerned not because of you, but perhaps something was going on in the family's life, or she was concerned about money or whatever it is, right? Whatever not positive and reinforcing expression you saw on her face, that back then, when you were around 10 months old, back then you decided and you started forming and crafting your personal manual or a rule book, a program of many, many layers of what was allowed or not. So if your mother was worried or concerned a lot, that gave you a signal that life was not safe, that you should not be free to explore, that you should sit still, right? So that's why people get so fearful of change sometimes, right? That's one of the main reasons why it's so hard to live that authentic life. And guess what? It's still to some extent affecting your relationship with the world right now as you grow up, as you're this mature, capable, unique, beautiful, resourceful human being, an adult. It's still affecting you. Right now, as you listen to my words, parts of that old program is still working and still controlling your choices and deciding for you, even without your conscious or intentional say. Right? So if there's anything, and I mean anything you will be taking away from my podcast overall, please take away this, that you can and you should review that old programming that is operating currently on super historical data and start shifting it towards a more empowering, supportive, energizing, motivating inner dialogue. Because that old programming is nothing more than a few flawed errors. There is no truth left in it anymore. It might have saved your life 30, 40 years ago, whenever you were a child, but it's not working anymore. It's stopping you right now. So, as a gift or love work that I have for you today is to put on this explorer hat and do some thought downloads or thought dumps, right? That is basically write out all of the thoughts that you have about yourself and career change. Let's focus on that, right? Because there are so many areas of your life that you could analyze it, and if you'll be inspired, please do so. But for now, let's focus on yourself and your career and change. If you haven't done this before, it's very simple. Just take a piece of paper, write down my career change at the top of it, and then simply start jotting down and putting thoughts on paper that come to you. Just start with the first thought, whatever you have. It's very important for you not to question, not to filter these thoughts, not to try to change them if you don't like them. Because I see that happen sometimes a lot when people are new to the thought work, is then they'll be like, I'm stupid. And then they'll take it out and be like, well, yeah, but I don't really think I'm stupid. Like I have like a master's degree. Like I'm not really, right? No. We want the raw thoughts, because I know that you can talk yourself into anything if you choose to. But what I want to know is, what is that raw inner dialogue that's happening in your head right now? So there's no filtering, no negotiation, no judgment, just literally exploring exactly what's happening. So when you'll write one thought, you'll see that once you start writing, you'll get in the flow and you will start seeing those thoughts just flowing out of you. And write them all down. Probably some of them will surprise you. Usually people find one or two like thoughts that I literally shock them, or like, what? How is that part of my reality in my head? This is such a horrible thought. I didn't even know I have it, but now it's making sense why it was stopping me, or like creating that inner conflict when it comes to me creating results, because it's such a powerful thought, right? Usually some sort of demeaning, limiting thought. And when you think that you're finished, I want you to ask yourself, is there anything else, right? And write down whatever else comes. Like I've said before, chances are like you'll find thoughts that you had no conscious awareness of, and just read them. Okay, for now, I just want you to read them through and just work on that awareness. Marinate in the knowing that you're starting to see more clearly what's actually going on in your head. You don't need to change anything. The first step is always getting super clear about what that inner voice sounds like specifically for you, right? Sometimes this internalized mother's voice or father's voice or someone that really affected you when you were growing up, right? You can also try to do a thought download on other areas of your life, right? If you'll feel like this is really useful for you. So yeah, that's what I had for you. It's a bit of a longer episode. So basically, last week I introduced to you the concept of thought work and gave you a few examples. Today we went a little bit deeper into it. And then in the next episode, I will share how to apply this and use this daily as a practice, because that is one of the most common questions that I usually get. It's like, how do I incorporate that into my daily life? Right? I'll also share how not to use the model against yourself, because that often happens, and also what to do when you have conflicting thoughts and conflicting models and how to get out of that mess. Okay. If you have any questions or if you have a thought download that you want me to look at it, feel free to send me an email, or even better, you can find me on Instagram at vilma.usaite. The link is also in the show notes, so please talk to me. I adore hearing from you. I'll always respond, and I love that connection because, like I said, having a podcast is the weirdest experience because you're literally talking to yourself. So getting the feedback sometimes is extremely nice and heartwarming. Anyway, I'm wishing you a super fun couple of weeks, and I hope it will be filled with thought awareness. Bye, guys. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you like this content, make sure that you subscribe to my podcast and leave a review. And if you know anyone who is going through a career change, make sure you share the podcast with them. Every little counts.